In this lesson, we're going to discuss the drawing tools. Drawing? I thought InDesign was a layout program. It is. But creating objects is drawing. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to New, Document. And we can use the defaults. Just click OK. There are three kinds of frames in InDesign. The first is actually the Type tool. If you click on the Type tool, you can click and drag to create a text frame. And I can tell right away that it's a text frame because it has a blinking cursor. Let me go to my Selection tool, and you can see that a type frame also has an import and an output. This is for threading frames together so that text flows from one frame to the next. We'll be talking about that in an upcoming lesson. Let's go to the next kind of tool. I'm going to go to the Rectangle Frame tool. If you hit your F key, you can get there very quickly. I'm just going to click and drag. And you can see how smart guides are helping me to not only line up the objects, but actually make them exactly the same width and height. You can see those arrows. Let me let go. And you can see I have a frame with an X through it. Anytime you see a frame with an X through it, it's a graphic frame. It's meant to contain graphics of some kind or another. Let me go to the last kind of frame tool, the Rectangle tool. If you hit your M key, you'll get there very quickly. I'm just going to click and drag. And you can see that kind of a frame doesn't have an X through it, and there also isn't a blinking cursor. It's called an unassigned frame. It's not meant to contain anything. It doesn't contain text, and it doesn't contain graphics. Well, what is it for? It's a graphic element. You can color this in with a swatch or stroke it with a swatch color. And it's meant as a decorative part of your layout. It's a graphic element. All of these tools work pretty much the same way, and you'll see what I mean as we go through the lesson. There are two ways that the frame tools work, both the graphic and the unassigned tool. The first is to click and drag, which we've already gone through. The next is to just click. And if you just click, it's going to open a dialog box that allows you to specify both the width and the height of your rectangle. Why don't I make that 3 inches by 3 inches and click OK. All of the rest of the frame tools, either graphic or unassigned, work the same way. Let me show you. I'm going to go to the Ellipse tool. I could just click with that and set it up in any size I want and just click OK. I could also click and drag. Underneath the Ellipse tool, there's a Polygon tool. I could just click, then specify a size and a number of sides and something called a star inset, which we're going to talk about in just a second. I'm just going to click OK, and I get a default 6-sided polygon. But what was that star inset about? Let me just click on that, open the dialog box again, and you can see I have 2 inches by 2 inches number of sides. Well, why don't I make an American flag star? I'm going to make it 5 points. I'm going to do a star inset of 50% and just click OK. And you can see I do get an American flag star. But what if I wanted a burst? Maybe I'm in promotion and I want to create a burst that's going to say free or new. I'm going to increase the number of sides to 20. And I'm going to make the star inset, let's say 10. And then just click OK. And you can see I got a burst. Let me go back to that tool, because you have to remember now if I were to click and drag with that tool, I'm getting another burst. To get back to my defaults, I have to click with the tool, specify the size that I want, go back to the number of sides that I may want, how about 6? And I don't want a star inset, so I'm going to make that 0. And then just click OK. There are a bunch of commands that work with these various drawing tools. Whether you're working with the rectangle tool or the ellipse tool or the polygon tool, or one of the graphic frame tools. You can see there are exactly the same tools under the graphic frame pop-up menu. Let's say I wanted to draw, instead of a rectangle or an ellipse, I wanted to draw a square or a circle. If I click and begin to drag, as soon as I press down my Shift key, I get an equal width and an equal height. So it's a rectangle, but it's also a rectangle that's a square. It's constraining it to exactly the same width and height. The same thing is true of my ellipse tool. If I click and start to drag, as soon as I hold down my Shift key, I'm getting a perfect circle. Let me select all of this by hitting Command or Control A, and then just hitting Delete. What if I wanted to draw an ellipse, but draw it from the inside out? If I click and start to drag, and then hold down my Option or Alt key, I am getting an object that's being drawn from the inside out. But what if I wanted this object that's being drawn from the inside out to be exactly the same width and height? Well, I can add to my Option or Alt key the Shift key. That, in this case, makes it a perfect circle. So these commands work with all of the graphic frames and all of the unassigned frames. There are a couple of other drawing tools that aren't used quite as much, but why don't we go through them? There's the line tool, which is really easy to use. All I have to do is just click and drag. But what if I wanted a perfectly horizontal line or a perfectly vertical line? If I click and begin to drag, you can see it's kind of hard to get it perfectly straight. But if I hold down my Shift key, it's perfectly horizontal, or it will go to 45 degrees, or it's perfectly vertical. Last but not least is the pen tool. The pen tool is rarely used in InDesign, but it is used quite a bit in both Illustrator and Photoshop. Let me show you how it's used. If I click with the pen tool, I get a point. If I click again, I get a straight line segment that is connecting those 2 points. If I click again, I'll get another line segment. But if I click and drag and pull out these handles, you can see I'm getting a curve. And if I click and drag again, you can see how the length and the direction of these handles totally controls the curve that you're getting. In the next lesson, we're going to continue working with objects.